Hey guys, welcome back to another little art doll video. So today I'm going to be making a Mooncalf. It is from Fantastic Beasts, I think, and the customer wanted a specific colour of it. So I'm going to be using these glass capuchons for the eyes. I'm painting up the pupil in like a nice big pupil, that is, and the customer had a request to have certain coloured eyes too, so I'm going around the outside with like a teal colour and then going around the inside with a really sort of light green colour, which I sort of just mixed with white, this teal colour with white, and then I'm sort of blending it all together. So now that they're drying, I can start sculpting all of the pieces. So I am using Sculpey Original for the main part of the head, and I'm using Super Sculpey for the feet, which is a nice beige colour, and that way I can have like that transparency for the feet as well. So it's like a beigey sort of skin tone in the feet from the reference photos. So I'm basically using an aluminium ball, foil ball, for the core, which acts as like the skull, I guess, and then I'm just really doing a rough shape to begin with, and then I can start refining all the pieces once I'm happy with the shape. So it's relatively easy to sculpt, to be honest. It was one of my easier things to sculpt, and it didn't really take all that much time to sculpt the whole thing actually. The feet were pretty easy to sculpt as well. So once I can sort of see the rough head shape coming in, I can start adding the eyes. So the eyes are pretty big for this one, so I'm adding them pretty early. Usually I do a little bit more refining before I add the eyes, the smaller eyes, but things as like this is the main feature of the face, I sort of started sculpting with them early. So I'm just putting them into place and making sure they're nice and even and symmetrical, and then I can start working on the sort of eye socket area. And I'm using like a little piece of, like a wormy piece of clay for the eyelids, and I can just sort of blend it into the rest of the head once I have put it all around the eye. And I usually use my little needle tool to blend things, and I sort of roll it along. I think it blends it into the rest of the clay really easily, rather than using like a paddle sort of tool, because it leaves like little indentations, while I find rolling it sort of makes it a bit more even and less work to smooth it out. Working on the little mouthpiece, so it's a little sort of pouty, snouty bit. So I'm working on a little lower jaw for this bit, and then I'm adding the top two little lips using the same sort of sized piece of clay and shaping it roughly the same as well. You can always refine it once it's been put on the doll as well, or on the sculpt, and then I'll be adding the nose on top of that once I have blended it in a little bit. Just doing a bit of work on the mouth section to make sure I've got that little semi-smile. So the nose, I do a rough nose shape, and then I start working on the nostrils and all the little details and sort of refining the shape once I've put it on. So I use a little ball tool for the nostrils normally. I have 3 different sizes, and they work really well for nostrils. And then I can start doing like the little groove at the edge of the nostril. Again, you're going in with my needle tool and rolling the clay over the bulk of the clay. Adding the little wrinkles that are on top of the nose. They're a little bit hard to capture when you apply the faux fur though, so I just sort of did it and see how we go, and I sort of enhanced it with some paint, but you'll see that at the end of the video how I did that. So this bit of clay, I'm creating the sort of jawline and just making it, curving it into the right shape of it, and then I can blend it in a little easier once I have the right shape. making sure that I am keeping that edge that I'm creating as well underneath the jawline, because that's the whole point of this. Now I'm adding some ears to the sculpt. These are pre-baked, so I basically sculpted the shape of the ear and then I can stick them on top. I don't normally do pre-baked ones, but I thought I would give it a little go and see how it works. It works really well because the ears still keep the shape, and then adding a little bit of clay to properly blend in those ears and make sure that they're nice and combined into the clay. Adding a little bit more clay to get the little double chins that you can see, and then that's pretty much the sculpt for this one. So I'm going to go bake it and start working on the feet as well. So I decided to add a tiny little bit of fur texture in those grooves just to refine it a little bit more, but after that I will go and bake this. So the feet are pretty simple little sculpt. I start out by rolling 4 balls of the same sized pieces of clay, and then I basically shape them into a rough foot shape. I've already sculpted one just to use as a reference and just see how the best way of sculpting it is. And then I'm using this little rake tool to create the little indentations that you see, like the little webbing. And then once the webbing has been roughly made, I then go ahead and roll out like a little snake or little worm piece of clay and add it on top, and that will include the nail, and then I can slowly blend that in and it will become like a toe and the nail, and then I can create the nail bed on once it's all blended in. So the nail bed's pretty easy to create. I'm using this little spoon kind of tool, and I'm basically pushing a small bit of clay back, and it sort of creates a little nail bed, which is super easy. I then put a piece of plastic over the top and create these little wrinkles using my needle tool. Super simple. So once that is baked, I can start putting the doll together. So I'm using a 1/4 size ball socket armature. I have some in my shop if you're interested, and a set of these pliers that you need to put the armature together. So I'm basically just putting the neck together for this one, and then I'm going to be painting some of the areas on this head before I put the doll together. So I'm just painting the inner ears with some pink, and then I'm going to be painting around the mouth and the nose with just like a blend of different tools. Just doing a little rough paint around the eyes as well. So I'm using a little bit of white and a little bit of raw sienna for the little mouth area, and then I'm going to be just adding a tiny bit of pink on top of it as well, just to tone that yellow down a little bit. Painting up the nose in a nice brown colour, and then I'm going to be just using a little bit of watered down brown paint just to enhance all those little wrinkle features. Doing a brown wash over the feet just to enhance those wrinkles as well and tone down that beige colour a little bit. And then I'm going to be painting the little nails in a black colour as well. Everything is a water-based acrylic paint, so super simple to use and water down really easily. And then I can start putting the whole doll together. So using my pliers again, I've measured out all of the sections that I need and making sure they're all symmetrical as well. And I always do that using a reference photo over on my computer to make sure I've got the dimensions right for either the animal or the creature. It always helps to have reference photos. So once that's done, I can start preparing to needle felt the body. So I'm using some pipe cleaners to go around, and that just sort of acts as a catch for the polyfill that I'm using to felt the body. And I'm just using a single needle felt needle, and it takes a little bit of time, but this one is a smaller doll, so it doesn't take too long to do the needle felting over this. And once the needle felting is done, I can then start adding the faux fur as like a skin. And I'm using this grey faux fur. It's super soft, but also a little bit difficult to work with. The pile is a little bit hard to cut with my cutting tool, so you basically have to use scissors to trim everything, because it just doesn't get through this type of, it's too like slippery or too soft or something, too fine. But it's really soft, really nice fabric to use, but yeah, a bit difficult to work with. So I'm starting off with my torso piece, which is the main big piece of the body, and then I'm going to be adding the legs to it and also the neck area. So I'm just cutting some little sections where I can slot the legs through, because I'm going to be adding the legs later, and I'm going to pin it all together and then sew it up using a ladder stitch. So you want to get yourself a good quality thread for this, because you need to put some tension on the thread, and the cheaper threads tend to snap. So I use Gutermann thread, and you can sort of tug on it a little harder than cheaper thread. And you can also use upholstery thread if you're using a little bit of a harder faux fur. Once that's sewn up, I start gluing the head to the neck area, and then I can start sewing the other bits up. So I got a little clip here because I wanted it to glue to it wasn't gluing properly, it was sort of coming slipping off, so I needed to just make sure it had a little clip to hold it in place. And I leave this to dry overnight. This glue is a little bit longer to dry. It's not my normal glue. It's still like a tacky fabric glue, but it's not the normal glue that I use, so it takes a little bit longer. So it's sticky, so the sticky glue sort of works a little bit better because it holds it in place a little bit better. So once that's done, I sew up the leg pieces, and then I can glue them together. Once I'm happy with that and it's all dry, I can start adding the faux fur. I'm going to be putting up a furring tutorial on my Patreon for this particular fur. It's not something that I normally do, but with this fur you kind of need to do it because it's really difficult to work with. So I'm just trimming the areas with some scissors, because like I said before, my tool that I usually use to trim it doesn't go through this particular fur. So it just gets stuck and just doesn't cut it at all. So I'm just using some sort of sharp scissors to get through it, making sure that I'm creating all of those little detailing that I did with the sculpting, so the jawline and some of the wrinkles. These scissors worked really well for cutting it, so it wasn't really an issue. Added the little tuft of hair on top of the head, and it's pretty lucky that I got a fur that was very similar to this colour, so that worked really well. Give it a little trim because it's a little bit long, and it worked really well for the little tuft of fur. Just going over some of the areas that need a bit of a touch up, so around the eyes with some of that pink paint, and just adding some little detailing like the wrinkles on top to really bring out all those little features. And that's pretty much it for this little video, so don't forget to give it a thumbs up, comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff. It helps my channel grow. I get so many comments saying that I'm underrated and I just don't get pushed out, so any activity always helps my channel grow. You can check out my shop at creaturesinat.com. Check out my Patreon for heaps of tutorials and discounts. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, I really appreciate it, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!